All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I know. I am excited too. Any one of us, if we're on TV long enough, could be part of the Trump cabinet. Isn't that exciting? You got to sort of sell your soul a little bit, and you got to kiss up to the president-elect a bit, but you could be running a big government agency. Clearly, competence is not the thing that they count on, but just putting it out there. Albert, you're looking for another gig. Maybe you could...
Albert, thank you.
You know. You're unknown, though. He likes people who are known, Albert. Likes people who are, on television.
It's just nice to know I'm kind of qualified at this moment. Maybe.
You are... In a rare realization, we discovered that Albert, with questionable qualifications for any job, is actually qualified to be in the Trump cabinet. It is an extraordinary thing. Kim is here also.
Kim, how are you?
Thank you for being here on time today, Kim. You are now contributing to this show on a level I never thought possible.
Wow.
Yeah. Kim is sort of the pre-show producer. She puts a lot of content into the show, so you see her as somebody there who does news and, is a trusted voice on this show. I see her as a critical element in the show prior to it ever getting on the air. So that's the way, I do the arithmetic on that. Having a technical problem here, and I don't know what the issue is.
I'm good. You look good.
Yeah, thank you. I did get my hair freshly darkened for the... Yeah.
I can tell. It looks
Yeah.
good.
For the rise of fascism, I like to darken my hair to this color. The fascists really like you to look good when they come around for you. So that is what's happening. Before I get right into these bizarre cabinet appointments that really are not that bizarre if you look at what defines a Trump universe and what he values, I did want to mention a couple of things in the media world. First of all, the InfoWars URL, that whole website, was sold at auction, and The Onion bought it. The whole media empire went to auction to help pay the Sandy Hook families that he'd been defaming for so long. This is a loathsome character, this Alex Jones. So a private auction took place yesterday. It was part of his personal bankruptcy plan, and The Onion, Global Tetrahedron is the parent company. They bought it with the blessing of the Sandy Hook families affected by his entire misinformation campaign. They said they're going to relaunch it with employees of The Onion running it, and eventually it will look like a parody of itself, is what they're saying.
Which is kind of appropriate because it was always pretty much a joke, right?
It was a joke to us, but the damage it did. It's as usual. It's these extremist positions that you think inconceivable that they would ever get any traction, and they did. I mean, those poor Sandy Hook families, they were harassed.
Yeah.
They were hunted. They had to move in many cases. I mean, it's despicable what was done. But in any case, the divesting of those InfoWar assets and the selling of all of this at auction hopefully will bring some resolution to this. And it is a cool coda that The Onion picked this up. And that's the latest there. Calling All Vegans sends us a $5 super chat. I'm sure this is really cringe and I'm embarrassing myself, but I'm going to gush like a schoolgirl anyway and say, you're the man, Mark. Wow, thank you.
Nice.
Gush on, baby, gush on. I'm loving it. I mean,
There's a reason that this place is fun.
apparently, I didn't realize it. Gosh, I could use a little more gushing. I'll be honest with you. I don't get a lot of gushing. I don't get a lot of gushing from the people I work with, and I don't get a lot of gushing from the audience. I get the, I like
Mark.
the show, but. I like the show, but.
You're
really
the man,
love-
Mark.
Yeah, well, don't do it now.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Yeah, I
What
don't
a-
need it now. I mean,
Gosh, you know.
calling all vegans is my new favorite listener viewer. So thank you. The other thing I want to tell you in media news, and then I will get to this madness that is the Trump appointments. I also have a comment I'm hearing from you guys on Trump sitting down with Joe Biden. Viewers flee MSNBC. They flock to Fox News.
What?
Why?
Primetime viewership at MSNBC has fallen 53% from October. It has jumped 21% to Fox News.
Is it people saying, you know what? Maybe I have been getting the wrong information all along. Maybe I do want to be duped. I might as well, if you can't beat them, join them. Just get sucked into that whole Fox News,
Well,
drain.
I can tell clearly the McAllister household doesn't have Fox News Channel on much based on your comments, but the performance mirrors what has really been happening since the election. You have the Rachel Maddow show. That's their big show.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the libs go to hang with their Rachel. 1.3 million viewers went there on Monday. That's about 1 million shy of the October average. And it was the least watched show of the Rachel Maddow show since April of 2022. And what's been happening is Trump, since the election win, has affected even TV viewership. So MS has averaged 550,000 viewers since Election Day. That's a 39% decline. And in prime time, the audience has declined 53%. So MS is off overall, and in prime time, they're off. They've lost half their audience. Fox's audience in prime time has grown 21% since last Wednesday. Their average is 3.3 million viewers, according to Nielsen. And their total daytime audience has jumped, 38%. It's wild. It's wild. So that's the latest in media news. Now, in Nobody Watches MSNBC, MAGA watched it in order to troll and hate. Now they've left, says Lexor. Maybe that's true. I don't know. We have an MS clip from, I think it's Lawrence O'Donnell's show that Kim found that she particularly liked. I'll share it with you in a second. It's more about Gaetz, and the revelations around Matt Gaetz are substantial. We've known him for a while.
Even Republicans are like, no, really?
Yeah.
You're going to do what? Yeah.
Angel in the Bay Area says with a $10 super chat, I should say. For me, I tuned out of MSNBC a few days before and since the election. I need to go back because I don't want Fox to get numbers. Yeah, I don't know how much you watching or not watching will affect the numbers, but I hear what you're saying, and that clearly was a pattern followed by a lot of people. People get dejected, people are downcast, people don't want any news about politics or the election, and they move on. I think that's exactly the wrong thing to do, but I completely do understand it at the same time, because at some point you have to kind of take time for yourself. So I'm one of the viewers who left sheer Trump exhaustion, says Copper. Yeah.
And I think that's relevant because I think I've heard multiple people say, I need to check out for a minute. This whole run up to the election, being so invested in the outcome, and then being disappointed at the end or devastated has really taken a toll on people. And some people need to pull back a little bit. I
also think, here's Deirdre says the same. I'm one of the viewers who left Trump exhaustion. Deirdre says, I had to stop watching MS for a few days to detox. There is a quality of also living, and I didn't do that here. This is not the place where you get the hopium that they were blowing over at MSNBC. I think we've been real. I'm always skeptical and cynical. I don't think much of people as a whole and American voters. And I see this country in decline, but that doesn't mean that there isn't magical treasures in this country that need to be conserved and lifted up. So please, but when you come to the election, I don't think we were pitching, oh, we're looking good. Why, look at this. The polls are up. But there was a lot of that in the world of MSNBC. Keith Olbermann did a lot of it. And then what that does is it just creates this apparently false hope that you're going to prevail. And then the reality hits and it's a cold slap in the face. I'm already getting the cold slap in the face. When you're living on the hopium that MSNBC was spinning for a while, we're all hoping, but it doesn't mean we need to delude ourselves. So anyway, that's the fallout. MS is scrambling a bit right now. My wife has an edict for the next 4 years. I don't want to hear him, see him, or think about him, says John Anderson. Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he's going to do a lot of stuff that's going to affect policy. And so I think saying, I don't want to hear anything about Trump, don't tell me about Trump, I understand it, as I said, but I also see that you're closing the door on something extremely important. I mean, so anyway. Hey, from Florida, I need this show and this community, says Sherilyn Markham. What Welcome. Up, Florida? Kim will give us an update on that tropical weather system they were watching as a possible additional visitor of Florida, but I love our Floridians who check in. Uncle Scrooge with a $20 super chat said, we need to protest with our pocketbooks and protest in front of the corporations that funded the Trump election. Money is the only thing that gets the message through. I've seen a lot of this. Thank you, Uncle Scrooge. I've seen a lot of this, and it's associated with this idea that somehow a boycott of some kind could be effective and could produce real messaging and also real change. I have to look at that more because, a boycott, you have to organize it in such a way so as to really be hitting people who will notice. I think oftentimes the boycotting can be a little like the protest vote in Michigan, which was, I'm sending a message that I don't like Middle Eastern policy, and so I'm voting for Jill Stein, or I'm just not voting.
Right.
Great. Well, then you end up with Donald Trump, and now you are cutting off your nose to spite your face because the reality is the Middle East policy will become even more radical and aggressive. I mean, if you really care about these things, that is clearly a misstep. Now, that's not to say that the boycott is a misstep. It might be really the very step that we should be taking. I'm just saying I'd like to know more about exactly how that would look. So we need an inconceivable drop from the Princess Bride. Yeah, we do. Maybe Trevor can hook that up. Nick says that. Thanks, Nick, for the super chat.
We do have a kind of a new drop, though.
We do. And then I'll tell you, something happened with a listener viewer of ours, and she sent us the video and the audio. And after this, I will get into the cabinet appointments. But just one last thing. So we do have drops on the show that come in and out, and we've kind of backed off a little bit on them. But
what?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of them. So one of our go-to drops is where my
weed smokers at?
Yeah. Okay. So that drop we will play with some frequency. Apparently, I guess we do. So we got this email from Noe Marie. She says, sorry for the poor quality of the video, but I was recording while driving home with my kiddo, who is 4 years old. He asked me, where is the guy that says, where my weed smokers at? But he said it in a 4-year-old sounding voice. So I asked him to say it again. Because of my great parenting, I had to share it. I also texted it to Kim. This is Noe Marie's a friend of the show from back in the KGO days. So go for it. Do you have it, Albert?
I didn't have enough time to edit it. So,
okay. But you have the raw video. Can you just play it?
Yeah.
No, it's on my phone. I'm sorry.
I see. Okay.
Albert, thank you.
All right. Wow. That information would have been so helpful to me if before I did the big lead up to the fact that we were going to share it with the audience.
I'll have it for the next news.
Okay, this is.
I don't think I can play the video, but I can play the sound. Do you want to hear the sound?
I can play the sound too. Everybody, what the hell is going on? Gosh,
why are you yelling?
I just don't see. Okay. Here's what the sound. You're going to hold the sound. You're going to hold the phone up to the mic.
This is really
no, don't do that. Don't do that.
Why not? It sounds great.
No, it doesn't. I've got it right here. This is the problem. Everybody, that sounds great. It's okay. No problem. Yeah. That's not the kind of attitude I need. I need quality on this show, Kim. If you want to go, it sounds great. I want to hold my phone up. Go work somewhere else. My God, we have high quality.
Is that what we demand the best?
Yes.
Right.
Why are you yelling?
All right.
Seriously, what the?
All right, here it is.
Say what you just asked me about.
Where's my weed smokers at?
Oh.
Where's my weed smokers at?
Yeah, well, that's him. That's
Where are my weed smokers at?
all right.
That'll get you a call from the preschool for sure.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you, everyone, and love that you're here. Now, moving on to news that will positively whip your head around. It is a remarkable fact that Donald Trump, a man who has found his way by essentially talking his way into the White House, that is to say, conning his way into the White House, finding an America that is ready to swallow his con, angry enough that they like this guy who smack talks and owns the libs. You now begin to see the administration that he's going to birth. He's been through it once over a 4-year period. The people who are the adults in the room, he wants to get rid of them. You've heard all of these things. And we knew this on paper. But what you now see is in practice what he is doing. So his outrageousness, to be honest, knows no limits. And we can go through all of his various appointments, and they're outrageous on some level. In fact, the only appointment that isn't outrageous on some level is probably his chief of staff. I mean, she really has her act together. I mean, again, she's on the wrong team as far as I'm concerned, but she is competent. The idea that Matt Gaetz is going to run the Justice Department, that tells you all you need to know about Donald Trump. He cares about someone who is going to take hold of the Justice Department, flush all of his cases, but whomever takes charge is going to flush all of the cases against Trump, but then flush the Justice Department of anyone who is not completely loyal to Donald Trump. He will turn the Justice Department, again, under the Justice Department, I'll remind you, there's the FBI. There are all these investigative agencies. The Justice Department has lawyers that are of every sort. And in the second hour, we'll talk to former federal prosecutor, now he's a defense lawyer, David Katz, who can give you a drill down. He's worked at the Justice Department. He can speak to this in greater detail. But my point is simply this guy, Matt Gaetz, who was under an ethics investigation for trafficking underage women. He is a frat boy turned loose on Congress. This guy is going to run the Justice Department. So Kim wanted us to see this. I think it is a good cut. Let's go with the MS cut from last night, Albert, and then I'll play you a couple of other GOP reactions to this.
No Republican member of the House of Representatives who is hated, and I mean hated, by more Republican members than Matt Gaetz. Here's the reaction of Republican Congressman Max Miller.
I just think it's silly. I believe that the president is probably rewarding him for being such a loyal soldier to the president. But the president is smart enough and his team is smart enough to know that Mr. Gaetz will never get confirmed by the Senate. Mr. Gaetz breaks things to break things, and then once he breaks it even more. And that is somebody who should not be the Attorney General of the United States.
Kevin McCarthy, who was driven out of the speakership by Matt Gaetz, said this.
I'll give you the truth why I'm not speaker. It's because one person
a member of Congress wanted me to stop an ethics complaint because he slept with a 17-year-old.
The Democrats in the Senate will no doubt want to hear from Kevin McCarthy as a witness at Matt Gaetz' Senate.
Yeah.
He also talks about the curious timing of the Gaetz resignation. He steps down yesterday, 2 days before the House Ethics Panel is due to release this, what I understand is to be a damaging, scathing report on him. And so now, will that report come out? Does the ethics investigation stop because he's no longer a member of Congress?
Well, I mean, that's the thinking, that the 3D chess of this is that he's resigned so that the report doesn't come out. And it's true that once he's resigned, the report doesn't come out. Now, there may be other ways to get that information out, from a subsequent investigation, from a leak. I mean, I think the leak is probably the way that they're looking at it, but it is a fact that this was sort of like, and you see how the levers of government are being already manipulated. Trump's not even in office yet, but Gaetz resigns from the seat because he knows the ethics investigation coming up, but Trump gives him cover by saying, you're going to run my Justice Department. I'm not saying that Trump doesn't actually want him to run the Justice Department, but even if he doesn't, he has, for the moment, made that report go away. He resigned to protect himself from the investigation of him. Yeah, exactly, says Gordon. Look at it as a strategic resignation, right? The other thing I had for you on Gaetz is other reaction, which kind of can make you think he might not get this through. Matt Gaetz does not want adults in the room, just young girls. Where's Chris Hansen to catch a predator when we need him, says Luis. Exactly. I mean, that is his thing. I'll remind you, he's the guy who was showing, this is on the floor of the House of Representatives, was showing other House members women that he'd slept with. He was like going through his phone showing, hey, yeah, I nailed her. I mean, this is his orientation.
I'm telling you, they took the worst frat. They went around, they found the worst frat guy in the frat. And they just thought, yep, we'll give you a job and we'll give you a job. Yeah. Because
these worst guys in the frat are huge blowtorches for Donald Trump. That's the one through line. This is Donald Trump owning the libs, owning the establishment, showing all of you mainstreamers, these are the people who will do well under my administration, the people who speak up for me, the people who are loyal for me. That is what this is about. The only litmus test that these people can pass is that one, the loyalty litmus test. When it comes to competence, Pete Hegseth is going to run the Pentagon? Are you kidding me? It's the biggest management job maybe in the world. He has no administrative or management experience. I don't care if he's gone to Afghanistan and Guantanamo Bay. That's got nothing to do with it. You know, this guy couldn't organize a parade. He's a morning show host on the weekend on Fox News Channel. But he's been unapologetic in his support of Donald Trump, and Pete Hegseth has also been, I mean, I think he's a troglodyte with this, you know, women shouldn't be in the military and all this, but he's that kind of guy. He's a bro. But leave aside, that's almost a philosophical point. Leave that aside. He has no competence when it comes to the kind of management you will have to do running the Department of Defense. It's offensive as a notion that you would nominate this guy. Now, back to Matt Gaetz, and we'll just button him out. Give me the second cut I have for you, Albert, please, if you would. I've forgotten what it is. But didn't I have another piece of video for you? I thought I did.
Yes, it's right here.
Okay. All right, thank you. Here's Albert now gathering this video for you.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah.
And the impact of any pick.
This is about Gaetz at the Justice Department.
Complete and utter horror. Matt Gaetz is incredibly ill-suited for this position.
Barbara McQuaid.
He's never been a prosecutor. He practiced law only for a couple of years before starting to run for statewide office as a state rep in Florida. This is a position that has to be based on law and on facts. And based on his comments and behavior in the past, I don't think we should have any confidence that Matt Gaetz can be that leader. This is an organization that has 110,000 employees. There are prosecutors and civil lawyers, FBI, DEA, and ATF agents, the Bureau of Prisons, statisticians at the Bureau of Justice Statistics, grant makers, and the idea that someone is going to come in with the idea of a blowtorch unless we can get our people in there is a complete tipping on its head the principles and the integrity of the Justice Department.
So that is somebody who is, again, a former Justice Department employee. I'll give you another one, and he'll join us live in the second hour, former Justice Department federal prosecutor. But you can see the reaction. Now, there are ways to get him through without going through the confirmation process, of course. And that's what Donald Trump wants to do, right? He wants to, and he's encouraging everyone in the Senate to offer him recess appointments. That would essentially get these people confirmed without the Senate. I believe they can only serve for 2 years max without any formal confirmation. But I was just going to double check that. Confirms the president's cabinet nominees without hesitation. Trump has already demanded that the new GOP majority break with tradition and allow recess appointments, meaning that the president-elect's nominees could bypass the Senate confirmation hearings. Any Republican senator seeking the coveted leadership position in the United States, this is from yesterday, must agree to this. But essentially, behind closed doors, the Republican senators put a mainstreamer in as the leader of their party in the Senate. We'll have to see. Presidents are given the authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to make appointments by and with the advice and consent of the Senate. But if the Senate is out of session, the steps by lawmakers to confirm such appointments, such as committee hearings and a chamber vote, are bypassed. This is what Trump wants. So, I mean, you've got John Thune. I mentioned him. He's the mainstreamer that they chose. I don't know that he'll go along with this. As the next majority leader, he would be the guy to corral the Senate, essentially. But he said, and this is a quote, we will do everything we can to process these nominations quickly so they can implement President Trump's agenda. We expect a level of cooperation from the Democrats to work with us to get these folks installed. We're going to explore all options to make sure they get moved and that they get moved quickly. Several lawmakers expressed support for recess appointments. Well, I mean, the people who are out front on this are people like Rick Scott, who, wants to be President Trump's buddy. Anyway,
in addition to recess appointments, and as Calvin writes, I'm also saying no FBI background check for Trump's picks. Didn't that recently happen, or is the FBI still doing the background checks on people?
No, Calvin is exactly right. And by the way, I want to come back to Calvin and after this is done, because he, I was very moved by something that I saw related to shadow producer Calvin Wong. But he's right. By fast-tracking this, you get around the FBI background checks. And Donald Trump has said, I don't want background checks on these people. I want them in. I mean, I think when you're looking at background checks, you're particularly looking at Matt Gaetz. I mean, this is crazy. Matt Gaetz's partner, you'll remember, I forget his name. We did the story on the show over multiple days. He's in Florida. I think he's serving time. He was involved in this trafficking situation. It's a human trafficking thing. She's underage, and they're moving her state to state and giving her money. Matt Gaetz is involved in this. And he's certainly involved from an ethics standpoint, and it would appear, I mean, from a criminal standpoint, he may have issues as well. Although the Justice Department, I thought, dropped the charges or decided not to move forward with those charges. I mean, it's a sketchy group without question. And I'm not sure that they're going to get all of them through. I mean, it feels right now as though the Trump political currency, his political capital is so strong that he might actually get the senators who are significant enough in number on his side and push this through.
They have to be now because he controls everything, right? The Senate, the House, the judiciary, one would argue. And so now it's, if you don't play ball with Trump, if you don't give Trump what Trump wants, then you'll pay. And who wants to pay?
I think that's true, but I also can make an argument for how politically you still have some wiggle room. Trump is a lame duck president. He is a one-term president. So I don't know necessarily that he has the power that he might have were he sort of serving in his first term. Now, I will grant you, he has the power of being an enormous bully, and he will call you out on social media. He will finger you in every possible way, point the finger, and I even I'm sorry. I meant he'll put the thumb on you.
Yeah.
And I also think that he, in this new era of Trump, he can turn the government on you too. Even if you're a Republican senator, he can start Justice Department investigations, IRS investigations. And this is the kind of leadership that Trump is about. He's about recrimination. He's about getting back at his enemies. And if he perceives that they're enemies within his party, he will call them out and he will turn the blowtorch of government on them. Right now, he's rewarding his staunchest allies with these key positions, right? But they have almost no relevant experience for these positions to which they've been assigned. It's crazy.
But who will go against him? Who will go against recess appointments? Who will stand up and say, nope, Matt Gaetz is not the right guy for the Attorney General of the United States? I would say no one, and we'll see. It's a test. It's a test.
I mean, now you're sounding like me. I mean, thank you for finally waking up. There is not a way necessarily to turn him back. You've already seen the gutless GOP. They had a chance to remove this guy. We wouldn't even be talking about Donald Trump if Mitch McConnell and his GOP pals in the Senate delivered this case. They were delivered this case of a guy overthrowing the government. He was involved in a coup with fake elector schemes and I'll remind you, a head of the Justice Department then, Attorney General, who he just handpicked at the last second. He was really a Trump henchman, and ultimately an angry mob that he encouraged to attack the Capitol. Anyway, they had that case delivered to them. And in one vote, they could have removed Trump from political relevance for the rest of time. But instead, they circle the wagons around him. And now Donald Trump is leaning on them for more, for what he wants. So
this shouldn't be a surprise. We knew that this type of thing was coming. And so I don't know who said the quote initially, but America gets the America it deserves. This is what people wanted.
No,
this is what you guys wanted. So this is what we have now.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, the you guys is like nobody who's watching the show and by the way, I understand this is an impressive victory. I mean, assuming it was legitimate, or to whatever degree it was legitimate, but it was still pretty much 50-50. So when you say this is the government you guys wanted, I mean, a slim, I would say, a slim majority of the electorate chose this guy. Look, I'm not taking anything away from the fact that a lot of Republican candidates did well in states as well, but let's not pretend like this is what America wants. Well, not really. I mean, this is what a lot of America wants, and sufficient in number to get this guy elected. And now we have to live with it. I'd say it's kind of a darker vision that I have of things, which is, you have the bullies in the class who are able to bully enough other people and rally enough other people with their own grievances to gain a thin majority. It's noteworthy. I found this guy is a professor who wrote a book on presidential appointments. Okay, so here's what he says. It's noteworthy that the people that he's selected for the most prominent positions tend to be people who are, I would say, good on television. So they're good on the sort of public-facing side of these jobs. I think it's a really good point. He goes on. I think there are some questions about whether the folks that he has selected have the experience managing large bureaucracies and have all of the substantive expertise they need to do those jobs. What a polite way of saying their utter incompetence with nothing in their background that would suggest they have the experience for managing immense bureaucracies. But maybe you can say, well, Mark, that's the problem. These bureaucracies are too immense. That's the problem with government. Well, you have to manage even to a smaller bureaucracy, the large bureaucracy. In other words, you have to identify ways in which you can streamline the bureaucracies if that's what you want to do. And by the way, none of these people have experience doing that. None of these people know how to look at an immense bureaucracy like the Pentagon, the Justice Department, the intelligence services.
Well, maybe we shouldn't worry about it because Ramaswamy and Musk are going to come in and cut all these departments anyway, right? And cut all the people. So he won't be managing that big of a group anymore.
Well, I'll say this, just because you mentioned Musk and Ramaswamy. First of all, there are a lot of egos in this game, and I think there's going to be some voted off the island very early. But I also think that, in a way, Ramaswamy and Musk have ceremonial jobs. Because I don't know, let me just give you an extreme example. Suppose they said, we just think the DEA is a total waste. The Drug Enforcement Administration. We just think that the war on drugs, it was manufactured by the Democrats, and we just don't see, it's a waste of money. I would just get rid of it completely. They both decide that, let's say, Musk and Ramaswamy. Do you think we can get rid of it tomorrow because Donald Trump signed something? No. You'll need Congress to do that. And I don't think Congress will do that. I just don't.
But as we already discussed, Congress is now in Trump's pocket.
On some level, but I think you'll run into some whitewater rafting when you start to actually bring some of these things in. I don't think they rubber stamp everything. I mean, again, Ramaswamy and Musk, they may be pals of Trump, and he may have cooked up some position for them in the lifeguard chair of efficiency, but the reality is they don't have government positions. Those positions were just invented by Papa Trump. So once again, I just would question their real skill. And again, he's going to be doing so much damage in other areas that maybe we don't even need to focus on this. But just because you mentioned Ramaswamy and Musk, I'm not necessarily persuaded that that thing that they were assigned will actually be executed in any kind of way that'll matter. What really concerns me is you got Elon Musk, who is on phone calls with Putin, and you have Elon Musk, who is a player on the world stage with interests on the world stage, and he's serving in government for the United States of America. I mean, I don't care whether he's got an official position or not. He's got the president's ear, and he's in on a lot of meetings. I don't know, almost every picture I see of Trump at a meeting has Elon Musk alongside. You know, it's me and my shadow. So I find that far more concerning, than something with Ramaswamy and Musk. So that's the way I see it. But wow, he is basically bringing everybody in who he's seen on TV, who has seen defending him on TV, who has seen prosecuting this war on political correctness on TV. And in Matt Gaetz, you have someone who is exposed as a frat boy who has no experience. I mean, you're hearing it from every quarter in Washington, those who really know. But it will go well beyond Matt Gaetz. I mean, I'm not so impressed with Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, she was a Democrat, and then she got popular with conservatives because she went for isolationist policies. She pitched herself sort of as a pacifist. She does have military experience, which there's a lot of respect for in this country, and she has a disdain for wokeness, right? That's her. She had a show on Fox News. I'm sure that's why she's top of mind. I told you before that Tulsi Gabbard should be of concern to Democrats because she sounds good. She's a very good surrogate for Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. And
Didn't she get sucked into all the conspiracy theories? And the more you listen to her, the more she sounds like a crazy person.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and maybe, meaning she does get, I think, into the conspiracy theories. And if you and maybe accept some of those conspiracy theories, then you might find her refreshing, or thank God somebody's speaking out, or you'll come on to the conclusion that you just come on to, which is, no thanks. But she is, do you understand, she's going to be head of intelligence, of the intelligence agency. She doesn't have any background in that. I mean, again, this is a person who, it's not the conspiracy theory stuff. I mean, again, all of these things fall into the resume and the background that we should all be concerned with. But the idea somehow that she is someone with experience with intelligence work is laughable. She's going to run the intelligence agency? Again, these appointments are appointments that come from someone who really just wants people out there speaking for him. And these people speak for him aggressively and effectively. And that's why they end up being even in the game to possibly serve in this administration. So we'll have more. Again, I'll have more on Gaetz with David Katz in the beginning of the second hour. I did want to...
The Mark Thompson Show.
Do you have the piece of video now, Albert? No, did I? Now I've forgotten what I wanted from Albert. It was a piece of video or something, wasn't it? Albert, what were we going to run? Wasn't it a piece of video I sent you?
Yeah, we have one on Twitter that you sent me from... here, let me just...
Albert, thank you.
Okay. It's particularly this is about Matt Gaetz. You can, when we do this video, Albert, maybe you'll clip this to the thing we were just talking about with Gaetz. But
yeah.
Okay, this is them talk. This is Newsmax. What is Newsmax? Are they are they right wingers, or what's the story on Newsmax? Kim, do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't want you.
All right, thank you.
This one. It's not News Nation. It's different than News Nation. I think Newsmax might be the conservative one.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, they're talking about Matt Gaetz. Go ahead, Albert, please. It's not long.
Take a hard look at. I mean, there was many times that he would go out on news programs in the evening, and he would tell me personally, "Hey, I got to go sell my constituent catheters," because all he was doing was selling himself, and evidently his constituent base is an older base, and that he thought that was funny. To me, that's not funny. You take your job and make it serious, do what's right by it, and serve. This isn't an opportunity for you just to have an opportunity to promote yourself, which that was what Matt Gaetz' goals was. And so now that he wasn't relevant before Speaker McCarthy, the Speaker McCarthy opposing him has made him a credible candidate somehow, and allowed him to get all the attention that he was seeking beforehand. And he's going to continue to do this, even if it's the next speaker, because he has to seek that attention. I mean, remember what I said, Emma, this is retail politics. This has nothing to do with policy or principle anymore.
Well, just jumping in really quickly, those accusations I know you brought up earlier, just those are allegations. They were never proven. And again, the Congressman Gaetz has denied those.
I will say that you're 100% right. He's denied those, and it went away. But the other part, what I'm saying about the individual, those aren't allegations. That's firsthand that he told me that we dealt with on the floor. The first time I ever met this guy, he walked up to me, and Kristi Noem at the time was at the podium. He was speaker, or he was elected at the time. He was a member-elect. So we was going through conference and orientation, and he walked up to me as Kristi Noem, now Governor Kristi Noem, and he said, man, she's a fine, and you can put the B word in place there. And I looked at him, I said, really? Because Kristi is a very close friend of mine.
Yeah. So it underscores sort of the way that Matt Gaetz goes through life and life in Washington as well. And that is he's always looking to nail some girl. And the younger the girl, the better. Trevor in Hollywood says the whole thing, Trump winning 2 separate times, then these absurd appointments, it all seems like a bad movie that had an intriguing treatment, then a terrible script. Yeah, it is extraordinary. It really is wild. Here is Stepping Stone Media Group, LLC. All right. Hi, the Mark Thompson Show. Perhaps you may not be aware, but the idea is not to govern America, but to gut America.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He will with the Social Security Administration and then lead us to the brink of bankruptcy. I do believe that Donald Trump, knowing nothing, meaning he goes in there with clueless, essentially he ran to, I think, avoid prison and also embrace new power. I do think, I mean, he said it out loud, get back at his enemies, etc. He does want to privatize. He wants to turn over the keys, essentially, to business people who all of whom I'd suggest, I mean, the one certainly in his orbit, want to privatize government. Government can't do it right. Private industry does. That's why we want the post office privatized. We want the military privatized. The military? Really, Mark? Yes. The military in huge numbers. Look at Eric Prince. Look at Eric Prince and how he ran Blackwater when it was Blackwater. Now they've changed their name like 3 times. But he had mercenaries go in and fight that war in Iraq. They were in Afghanistan as well. Eric Prince very much wants to be part of this Trump future. And that's just the beginning. They feel everything should be privatized. Private industry can do everything more efficiently. And again, as I revisit occasionally, there are a lot of things in government that, and the post office is a classic example, that really, they're not set up so that every exchange you make money on. Like when you're delivering to some rural post office, that is the government performing a service that they're not making money on. That's why those rural postal offices, if it was ever to really be privatized, they'd probably be closed down. They would have to drive to a city or a closer location to get their mail or any kind of delivery. I mean, that's just one example. But my point is, they have their designs on all of government, and they really can now run amok. Wait until the Republicans force Medicare enrollees into Medicare Advantage, or just give seniors a yearly stipend and expect them to find insurance on their own. Good luck, says Randy. By the way, stipend is a ding word.
It is?
Yeah, it is.
I think you're a little too happy with the ding there.
No. I believe Tulsi is very pro-Russia and very pro-Putin. It's been suggested before that she's a foreign agent of Russia, if memory serves. Could be wrong. Yeah, it's interesting. The questions around Tulsi Gabbard are related to Russia anyway, are associated with the fact that, and she passes it off as pacifism, of course. She's against the Ukraine funding, and there are a lot of people who are against the Ukraine funding who fall into that Tulsi category. But she's even been more vocal for Russian interests and suggested that many of the things she says are Russian talking points. Might she be a Russian asset? Even when I say that, an unwitting Russian asset. That is to say, having been drawn into the talking points. The talking points are associated with, well, NATO was expanding. They were talking about expanding. They were talking about bringing Ukraine in. And so who can blame Russia? I mean, here NATO said to Russia that they wouldn't expand, and then they do expand. And so if you're Vladimir Putin, I can understand why you would feel threatened. that's part of a longer conversation. First of all, Ukraine was not talked about as a member of NATO. There were a bunch of reasons that they would likely not be signatories to NATO at the time. This is pre-Ukraine war. But the idea somehow that you would swallow this and suggest that the aggression on the part of Vladimir Putin was somehow provoked by the West, I don't buy it. I just don't. But, and great, get Trump out and we get Vance, says Tom. Yeah, I mean, it's a rogues gallery for sure. So every time you ding, my dogs think someone's at the door. Well, is someone at the door? I mean, maybe you should be checking that door more frequently. It may work out as a good thing.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right. I have David Katz upcoming. I am looking forward to talking more about Gaetz, talking about the overall, this is a guy who worked in government for the Justice Department. You may look at government from afar and say, oh, they don't know what they're doing. There's all this waste, et cetera. Government does a lot of good stuff. And the regulatory agencies that are charged with managing everything from the environment to consumer affairs, they are safeguards for all of us. Again, there can be government overreach, and it can be outrageous government overreach. But when it comes to safeguards on water, on soil, on air, the toxins that can be spewed into all of those places, you've got to have a regulatory agency. You've seen time and time again, government has to step in. If they don't, business and corporations are bad citizens in that way. That's just the environment. It's also on the consumer side. You need to have constraints on banks, on any business that is doing business with the public. The government is supposed to be us. And we set up protections so that when we're involved in retail trade of any kind, any sort of business back and forth, there is a law. There are guardrails. There are protections. Those are the regulations. Of course, they're all played by Trump and his cronies as cumbersome regulations, but they're actually critical protections. So, smash the like button if you would. That helps us in the world of YouTube. It's free.
Smash it with your iron rod.
If you see anything, it's a conversation, it's a clip, it's something that you want to share across social media. It helps us grow the audience. I appreciate that. I appreciate any sharing of the material that you do. It just helps, increase our footprint. And the last thing I'll say is that we are a Patreon and PayPal supported crew. So it is like a PBS NPR model. It's the, if you like this program and want to see it survive, it depends on your Patreon or PayPal support. Consider being a contributor. There are links underneath all of our videos, this show, and on all videos, there are hot links to Patreon and PayPal. And join the community that keeps us on the air. Thank you. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. A Houston man is behind bars after the FBI accused him of giving support to ISIS. The agency says 28-year-old Anas Saeed allegedly attempted to provide material support to ISIS and admitted to planning a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. He is alleged to have been researching how to conduct an attack on local military recruiting centers and offering his home as a safe sanctuary to ISIS operatives. Busted. President-elect Donald Trump is picking Florida Republican Matt Gaetz as his nominee for Attorney General, as Mark mentioned. Wednesday's news followed closely by word that Gaetz was resigning from Congress. The resignation means the House Ethics Committee investigating Gaetz over allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use will no longer have the ability to continue its probe, which was reportedly in its final stages. Georgia's election interference case will continue. Re-elected District Attorney Fani Willis has indicated she intends to push forward with the 2020 investigation that involves multiple suspects.
That's just wild. That is just wild. It's great,
includes
but
Donald Trump he's just one of the suspects there, but the case may have to wait 4 more years now that he's president-elect. So she'll move forward with it, but she might have to push the pause button. Betting platform Polymarket is calling an FBI raid on its CEO's home obvious political retribution for predicting Donald Trump's election victory. The FBI reportedly raided the Manhattan home of CEO Shane Copland Wednesday, seizing his phone and other electronic devices as well. The Justice Department is investigating the company for allegedly allowing U.S.-based customers to make trades on the platform in violation of restrictions.
There is no way the government is raiding the Polymarket dude's home. By the way, he is, I want to say 26.
He's been photographed with Trump before. He's a Trump
but
buddy.
he was at Mar-a-Lago, I think, maybe even the night of the election. I don't know. He's at Mar-a-Lago a lot. But there's no way the government is raiding the Polymarket dude's home just because they're angry about the fact that his market platform was predicting a Trump victory. There's just no way. I mean, they could never get away with that. So, I mean, right now, I mean, once Trump takes over, they could probably do that kind of thing. But they'll need a warrant. They'll need, a probable cause. And so it's suggested that there is less than a legitimate thing going on in the Polymarket market. A lot of people made a bunch of money, but again, it might be that they are in violation of various laws concerning this sort of thing, the arbitrage associated with this sort of betting. But that said, I just want to make the point. There's no way it's somehow retribution for the fact that they were supporting Trump.
That's what he's saying. He's saying it's obviously political. We'll see. The FBI is offering a $25,000 reward for information leading them to the suspect who set fires at ballot boxes in Washington and Oregon. Only $25,000 for that? You'd think that'd be worth more of that information. The FBI says it needs more information about the suspect's vehicle. It was an early 2003 to 2004 Volvo S60 sedan, dark in color with dark wheels and a light-colored interior. The FBI wants to hear from anyone with information about Volvos that match that description. If Vice President Kamala Harris runs for governor of California in 2026, she could have a significant edge over the other candidates. A survey from UC Berkeley's Institute shows that nearly half of voters might support her, with strong backing from Democrats, about 72% of whom would consider her candidacy. However, the poll indicates that support for her as a governor is lower than for her presidential run this year, with 46% of likely voters showing at least some interest in her bid for governor. In comparison, she's received 59% of votes in California for the presidential race so far. She has not indicated one way or another whether she's interested in the governorship. Political differences in the 2024 election continue to cause problems at some Southern California schools. There's a teacher at Cerritos High School accused of abandoning her classroom because one of her students wore a Make America Great Again shirt to class. So the teacher allegedly wrote a long essay to her students telling them it was unfair the students could wear political attire, but teachers cannot. The school district says it's investigating this. This comes after a high school teacher in Moreno Valley was put on paid leave last week after they were recorded going on a lengthy negative diatribe about President-elect Trump in the classroom.
Well, yeah, I just remember, diatribe is a ding word, by the way. There's a memory I have, which is all of us wearing peace signs and, peace T-shirts and stuff like that. It wasn't directly political, but it was definitely anti-Vietnam War, that kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, and I was just a little kid, and I'm wearing this stuff. And I guess this is a little kid too. I don't know. This is an odd thing because it is sort of a free speech issue, but it's become so divisive. This is oddly why I like uniforms. I think, I know that's a weird thing because I really believe people should be able to wear what they want and you don't want kids to go. But kids are so into what kind of tennis shoes they're wearing or what kind of other fashions they're displaying. It can, A, make parents go broke, and B, it can cause a lot of distress to the kids' psychological health. So why not dress everybody in, I know you're going to hate me for this, but whatever it is, the blue blazer and a white shirt and whatever it is, and that's it. And we all look like we go to Catholic school. I don't know. It would get you around issues like people wearing a MAGA hat or a MAGA shirt. It's like, dude, please, I just don't need this in my school. It's enough problem to, handle these cell phones and all that. I don't mean to sound like but I'm just saying, there are some old school ideas that could apply and just make life a little easier.
Florida is taking legal action against a FEMA worker accused of ignoring hurricane victims who displayed signs supporting President-elect Donald Trump. Attorney General of Florida, Ashley Moody, says a lawsuit has been filed against former FEMA supervisor Marnie Washington and the agency's current administrator, Deanne Criswell. Moody says she's going to find out how far the political discrimination reaches and to make sure all Americans who fall victims to storms are served. A complaint claims at least 20 homes in Lake Placid were skipped due to Washington's guidance after the area was hit by Helene and Milton. This is a weird story. I don't know if you've been following this. This is about the actress Chanel Banks. Her husband says she's alive and well. And it supports what the Los Angeles Police Department announced yesterday as well, 2 weeks after the family members of this actress said they last heard from her. Banks is known for her roles on Gossip Girl and Blue Bloods. Her husband told KNBC TV in Los Angeles that police provided him with photos of his wife, and he confirmed it was her. But Banks's cousin says she was also shown photos of a woman contacted in Texas and says it was not her. A message posted to Banks' social media account yesterday says, "I am not missing." It goes on to state that she left Los Angeles to get away from her mother. There are all kinds of accusations of abuse there. This is a 36-year-old woman who now on social media claims she's not missing, and her family members say they want the search for her to continue. Strange.
It is bizarre. I didn't know anything about it.
8 monkeys remain at large after escaping from a research facility.
Good for them. Good for them, goddammit. Yeah.
3 more monkeys were captured last night, bringing the total number of recaptured monkeys to 35. The remaining monkeys are reportedly hiding in the woods near the facility as police use traps to try to catch them.
Animals shouldn't be in labs.
No. Are we rooting for the monkeys? They were running through the forest.
That's so sad. The whole thing is so sad. It's so sad because they have no chance to survive out there. They were raised in a cage. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to animals in labs, beagles are used oftentimes in all kinds of testing because they are naturally docile as a breed, and then they breed them to be even more docile so that they tolerate being manhandled, for lack of a better description. I mean, they are roughly handled in these labs. It doesn't matter if they're roughly handled or not, they are. But what they do to these creatures is unspeakably awful. I mean, and I wouldn't even begin to tell you about it. It's like a torture movie. And so sadly though, they'll probably die out there in the elements, right? I mean,
they'll capture them.
Yeah, they'll capture them and do what? I mean,
they're luring them in with food, and then
capture them and kill them.
Their future remains bleak no matter what happens.
Exactly. Free Caesar, bravo. Yeah, right on.
Scientists in Australia believe the addition of carefully placed lights on a surfboard might protect against shark attacks. The researchers believe sharks are attracted to dark silhouettes, so they experimented by dragging fake sea lions through the water. Sharks would typically attack the lures. When researchers wrapped the decoys in LED lights, the sharks ignored them. They think that if a surfboard is adorned with lights, it might provide some protection here. They emphasize there's no guarantee that their assumption is 100% correct, but maybe the lights will do a little good.
That's fascinating, though. Yeah, that's wild.
Password manager NordPass is out with its annual list of the world's most popular passwords, and for the second year in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is at the top of the list. Have we not, people? Have we not gone over this? It is followed by the number 2 password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm telling you. Also on the list are password. That's your password. Password.
Yeah.
QWERTY, and the really good one, secret. Really?
God, that's so funny.
No wonder we're all getting hacked.
idea, but it just might work.
There's a
Come
pretty
on.
big star that I know. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but we were kind of in touch, and I was sending him something. I said, "What's your email address?" And he told me his email address, and it's his name. He's a pretty big star.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, at whatever I want,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, maybe that's a straight. I mean, maybe that's a good address. Like, I don't know. Maybe if you could guess it. I mean, it's as a password, it doesn't work, but it might work as an email. All I'm trying to say is, in the moment where you're trying to pick these things from passwords to email addresses, you're just thinking like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, it's like no one really wants to be sitting there trying to think of the perfect password. So I kind of understand it, but it is something that has been discussed, and it does leave you insanely vulnerable. And the last thing I'd say is now all of these platforms from Apple to Android, they offer you, do you want us to pick your password for you? You see that all the time. Would you like us to, would you like, and you always go, no, I want to pick my own. So, my password is just the truth or whatever. You know what I mean? So you end up in this place where, I don't know, sometimes the whole password game can be a little bit,
The
fraught with
problem is
issues.
people have so many different passwords that then you
Right.
forget the password. Then you try to dumb down the password so you'll remember it, and then you use it for every single website, which again leaves you vulnerable for hacking.
Right.
But come on.
Thank you. That's
1,
Kim's
2,
so
3,
right.
4,
They
5,
tell
6,
you,
7, please.
yeah, not to use the same password for everything.
No.
So that's why you end up with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyway.
Yeah. This report is sponsored by the amazing CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Oh yes,
I
for the
have-
holidays. Yeah.
Devastating news. I have run out of my Coachella Valley coffee tea bags.
You ran out?
I did. I let myself run out. It's a horrible situation.
That
They
is
have
horrible.
loose leaf tea, and they have these tea bags that are good for the environment. They don't have plastic or metal or anything else like that on them, and they're so good. You wonder why they're not more widely used. But I let myself run out, so I have this contraption that I use that's like a metal tea diffuser that I made, and it's good, but it's not the same as with their tea bags, so I have to order some more.
Wow, you do. And you can get 10% off at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You use the code MARKT at checkout, and you too can be part of the fantasy. Oh, yes. It warms the soul, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. We have the Why Are You Yelling decaf from Peru.
Ooh, nice.
And pick it up there. It's fresh. All these beans are fresh. That's why they're a little more expensive than the average. If you just go on the internet and looking for coffee beans, you can find them because they're not fresh beans. They're discounted. They've been sitting around for months. These are fresh. They're all hand roasted. There are tasting notes on each one, and you'll get 10% off everything at checkout using Mark T, as Albert is demonstrating. Do it. Enjoy it.
Albert, thank you.
And support a great small business
Don't
and small
forget
business guy.
Don't forget the holiday coffee.
Yeah.
They have the holiday coffee, the holiday tea.
Yeah, they have a lot for the holidays. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on. Thursdays, everyone. Thank you. If you're new here, Thursdays bring a regular guy into our midst who is a familiar voice across the English-speaking world when it comes to analyzing legal issues. You hear him on London radio. You hear him in cities from New York to the cities in New Zealand, like Auckland. He is literally across the English-speaking world. He is a coveted analyst when it comes to legal issues. So he's a former federal prosecutor. Now he is a defense lawyer in Los Angeles. How about it for the great David Katz?
Great
Hello,
to be
sir.
with you.
And David, the Justice Department takes center stage in some of these appointments that Donald Trump has offered up. And the Matt Gaetz appointment, he would be the Attorney General of the United States. That is something that has brought the ire of many, even Republicans, who have commented on this. I wonder, you have actually worked in the Justice Department. Tell me what's involved as Attorney General and how Matt Gaetz might fit into this entire thing.
Well, a couple of things. He has no prospect of being confirmed by the Senate. They made John Thune the Senate Majority Leader, leader of the Republicans. He's a moderate to conservative guy. He has no intention of getting his caucus there, 52 or 53 Republicans, to approve, to advise and consent on Gaetz. What's going on with Gaetz is that Gaetz was looking for what he considered a graceful exit from the House of Representatives before a scathing ethics report was delivered against him. It was scheduled to come out this Friday, but they only have jurisdiction and sway over members. So by becoming an ex-member, he hopes to delay or maybe even stifle that report. I think it's going to leak out anyway. And as I say, it's going to be damning. Going through alleged sex trafficking with him, by him with a 17-year-old, improper conduct on the floor of the Senate, being involved in various scams. There's a huge scammer down there who said that Gaetz was his wingman, did all these crimes with him. You have to always take these snitches, who want to get out of jail sooner or get out of jail free with a grain of salt. I get it as a federal criminal defense attorney. But Gaetz is in a world of trouble. He's also unswervingly loyal to Trump. So he went to Trump and said, look, I need a favor. Help me exit gracefully from the House. So he took this big job, and because he's taking this big job, he can't be a congressman anymore, for goodness sake. But the whole thing, it was the tail wagging the dog. It was all him trying to get out of the House of Representatives before that ethics report was publicly disclosed on Friday. Now, as to this ruse that he's really going to be the Attorney General, there's two ways they might accomplish this. Trump was pushing for this guy, Rick Scott, who had his own federal criminal investigatory problems, but he survived them. His companies paid enormous fines, and he became a United States Senator from the state of Florida. And he wanted to be the majority leader, and they started this talk that he would give recess appointments to whoever Trump wanted to send up there, which meant that there would be no advice and consent first. There would be an appointment first. So after January, the Republicans will be back in control of the Senate. It's up to them then, Mark, whether to take a recess. If they take a recess even over a weekend, during that recess, because the country, we need to get on with the MAGA agenda, we need to do these things, Trump would parade around that he needed someone in there right away to manage the Department of Justice, and that would be Gaetz, and he would make this recess appointment. And then when the Senate gets back in session, they can deal with the fact that there's no longer a recess, and here's this guy appointed. But they'd have to go through a fair amount of work and effort and consensus to get him out at that point. So the whole recess appointments was to put these unbelievably awful, unconfirmable people on there. Now, the Senate would have to give up. They'd have to abdicate a lot of their power. And you're from Washington, D.C. These guys and gals don't spend their whole careers to become 6-year term senators to have little power. They like very much to reward their friends and punish their enemies. And so if you're an enemy of a senator, they have all these things that you never advance politically. They don't want to give up that power to Trump, where the whole criterion is going to be if you're a friend or enemy of Trump. They want it to be if you're a friend or enemy of the senators. So I don't see the senators giving up that power. I don't see them allowing a recess appointment. One thing they can do is they can stay in session. They can technically stay in session, and then there isn't technically a recess. and then there can't be a recess appointment. One last thing, this issue has gone up to the U.S. Supreme Court on the theory that, wait a second, the Constitution says clearly it is the role, the exclusive role of the Senate to advise and consent on these key appointments, like to the cabinet. But the question would be, Mark, who would have standing to raise it? A bunch of advocacy groups might be denied standing in the federal courts. Maybe the Democrats. But the argument would be, look, you don't have any right to advise and consent. There's only 48 of you. It's the 58 Republicans' rights who are being abrogated here. So it might be hard to find somebody to actually raise it. But this will be a fight between the moderate to conservative Republicans who now hold the Senate under John Thune and Trump. And I think bet on Thune for this one. So bottom line, he's not going anywhere. He's the deep state got me. This was so unfair. There's all of these, what do they call them? Republicans in name only who are in the Senate. They stopped me. I was going to de-weaponize the Department of Justice. Of course, the fear that everyone has is that he would actually weaponize. This is the projection. Trump and Gaetz are always saying, Biden weaponized the Department of Justice. The truth is just the contrary. They hope to weaponize the Department of Justice against their enemies. I don't think the Republican Senate will stand for this man ever. If you want to talk about his own peccadillos and worse, we can get into Gaetz's. There's one last thing, Mark. I'll let you talk. But Kim and I go way back, and I'm sure you do on your program, because we all remember when Gaetz was under federal criminal investigation for what was going on with this 17-year-old young woman. And was he sex trafficking her? Was he just taking her across state lines for his own personal sexual purposes, which is not the guideline? Usually it has to be commercial. It has to be various people who are transported across state lines. But my goodness, it's not a good look to have the defense. I didn't really do it commercially. I just did it for my own personal pleasure. And I didn't do it with lots of women. I just did it with a couple of women. Not a great look. And before we got worried about you getting demonetized, on Pat's show, they always played "Young Girl, Get Out of My Mind."
Yeah, the old Gary Puckett number. Yeah, he clearly has a thing for young women, and he's a frat boy who's sort of run amok. I was saying earlier, you'll recall, he was showing pictures to other Congress people on the floor of the House of women he'd been with. He's not, he's not exactly very high-minded when it comes to serving the people, but he is slavishly serving that president-elect, Donald Trump, and that's sort of how he ends up here. And as you say, I guess he was just thrown a bone by Trump to kind of give him cover, you're saying, to get out of this ethics investigation and the revelations. Now to the other, I want to be clear on what you just said, and I want to get to the other nominations. Are you saying that for the other nominations that have other issues, like Pete Hegseth at DOD, Tulsi Gabbard, whatever, are you saying that they likely won't allow? I mean, I understand you're just handicapping here. I mean, you're kind of Katzadamasing this. They will not allow recess appointments for them either?
Well, you could take the one on Gaetz to the bank. Hegseth, it's really interesting. I've been on Fox, including been on Fox on the weekend. And that Fox show is right near Union Station in Washington, D.C. You probably know that area very well down there. And I've sat there with Laura Ingraham, and I've sat there with some of the presenters. And I have to say, as I looked across the table, I didn't agree with some of the Fox hosts. But I did not imagine that one of the two or three of us in that studio on the weekend was going to command the largest military in the history of the planet. It is so extraordinary. They're usually four-star generals. They're people who've done a fantastic job in the military. They've, organized things. There's over 1 million people in the military. There's an enormous budget. And I think that the Republican senators will say, he could be a White House aide if that's what you really want him for. Those people don't have to be confirmed by the Senate. But I think they'll say with him that it's a bridge too far. He is nice looking. They say about Gaetz that he's had all that Botox. But, when they write the history of the decline and hopefully not the fall of the American empire, it will have been done under Trump by nice looking people.
And
That's exactly
what
right.
you
And
say.
I mean,
He's
let
a
me just
nice-looking person, isn't he? That's what you could say, to be the commander of all of our military forces as the head of the Department of Defense. He's a nice-looking person.
That is what Trump likes. I mean, we mention these things that are superficial, but Trump is a one-dimensional guy, and the superficiality actually serves that president. So I don't think you're wrong to point to that. He likes the way the guy looks and sounds, and he, of course, he supports Trump. I was saying it as well. I mean, this guy, can't manage a kid's birthday party, and you're going to put him in charge of, managing the Pentagon. And
did you see Colbert? Mark, 5 years ago, he's interviewed, and Colbert has the clip. And he says on Fox, this is a public show going out to the nation. He says, one thing about me is that I haven't washed my hands in the last 10 years. Now, I thought this has to be parody. Where did Colbert get this thing? But apparently it's a real thing. So if he does get the post, Mark, and any of your listeners, viewers, ever have a chance to shake his hand, don't.
So when it comes to the legal cases against Donald Trump, they all evaporate, except Kim was telling us today that the Georgia case is continuing. Kim, weren't you saying that Fani Willis is actually intending to continue this case?
That is her intent. She was reelected to her job, and she says, now, mind you, Trump isn't the only suspect or defendant in this case. And so she'll move forward with the case, even if she says she has to push a pause on Trump and wait to prosecute him for 4 years until he's out of office.
That case has been, I think, indefinitely suspended by the state appellate courts. Now, after it gets suspended, it may spring back to action. They're certainly going to say that the prosecution of Trump down there is barred by presidential immunity. And I've said this before, but one of the things that's scary for our republic and our democracy is that the U.S. Supreme Court decision rendered last summer about presidential immunity makes a president, even after serving, immune for anything that they do while they were president. And the logic of it is that you can't just have the 50 states, right, bring those criminal suits against a president and say, oh, now we protected presidential immunity because the federal government can't do it. The reading of that, especially by this U.S. Supreme Court, would be that it also affects the states. So what does that mean? That means there's presidential immunity for official acts that Trump took while he was the president before. And he was still the president up until January 20th, 2021. So when he makes the phone call into Georgia and says, hey, just find me another 11,000 votes, meaning concoct me 11,000 votes, that's something he did while he was president last time. The argument is that it was not an official act because the president has no role in state elections, even of himself. Boy, I think that's going to be a thin read on the for this U.S. Supreme Court. So I think that basically on that lawsuit, on that criminal prosecution, she is suspended. Even if they say she can go forward. Remember, there's this whole issue of whether she can go forward or whether she should have been recused.
Because of her relationships, yeah.
And so I think the case may be in suspension. But I think what Fani Willis is going to do is she's going to play her cards as long as she can. And until courts tell her you have to suspend. She won again in a landslide. This lawsuit, this criminal action is popular in the area she represents, Fulton County. And I think that she'll feel like she has to play it out until the courts say either your case is suspended or you can no longer be on it. If she can no longer be on it, somebody else from her office will grab it. Or if she has the authority, she'll pick a special prosecutor down there, not the one she picked last time. And they will run with the ball as long as they can. Now, maybe in a perfect world, if you want Trump and his Department of Justice and the FBI not to be vindictive and retaliatory under his command, maybe it would be better if everyone stepped down, right? If everyone stepped aside from these prosecutions. But there's no real way to arrange that. So I think she'll proceed ahead. I think that Trump will, if he does one thing in the justice system, is try to retaliate against her. There are ways that he could try to retaliate against her, those scary ones, audit her taxes, do all those kinds of things, put her under some surveillance that's going to be hard to prove, trying to catch her doing something and then say, oh, no, this wasn't selective prosecution. You did something. You went through the traffic light at 70 miles an hour, and you shouldn't have done that. And the fact that we followed you every single place that you went, every time that you went anywhere, you're still not supposed to drive through a stop sign, are you? So there's that kind of thing. And there's the other thing that they've had to be in federal court. So one of the things that obviously they'll try to use to intimidate her, and that her counselors have to be telling her, is that some of these matters, remember they tried to move some of these cases into federal court, and some of the people that she was prosecuting didn't manage to move them into federal court. And in the course of that, state officials like her and people who work for her took actions in federal court. So they could trump up, and I use the expression, the pun intentionally, they could trump up that she committed some federal crime, she made some federal statement. A lot of our perjury prosecutions in federal court are based on the fact that someone lied on some form. So Trump will be in a tit-for-tat war with her and her office, and you just stay tuned.
Question from James Watson: can Jack Smith release all of the evidence in the Docs case before he resigns?
Very good question. Some of it may be national security, and so it will be covered by the general provisions that you can't release national security. It would be farcical if Trump could take those documents down to Mar-a-Lago, documents that should never see the light of day because they show how we might attack Iran if we got into that situation, how we're countering Russia on various things that Russia's doing. And then because Trump, in my opinion, still took them unlawfully, didn't give them back, lied about them, if somehow they then got released in Jack Smith's report, that would be completely circular and inappropriate. So that's not going to happen. But as to things that aren't national security, he has a duty to release a report. This is not something he's doing vindictive or because he's a deep state guy who's mad about the fact that Trump won. He has a duty to write a report. You'll remember that Mueller wrote a report, then it had that executive summary that was twisted and was different from what the report actually said, that was prepared by Barr, and he put that out before Barr put the report out. But Mueller wrote an extensive report. You could buy a book. It was interesting if you waded through it. And Jack Smith will put out a report both about what happened at Mar-a-Lago, and he'll put out a report about January 6th, the two cases that he investigated. And it'll be depressing reading. It'll be a little bit like the Jan 6 report, but it'll have a lot more detail in there. Some grand jury testimony is not disclosable, and so don't expect grand jury stuff. Don't expect national secrecy stuff. But it'll give Trump a slow or rapid burn. It'll be things that Trump and his minions will hate to see because it will explain in detail, as he has a duty to make that report. But the prosecution trying to put people in jail, that's over. And I worried a little bit, or wondered a little bit, about the two other people who aren't now going to be president, who are charged down in Mar-a-Lago. But it looks like he's just going to give up on that case, and he's not going to fight about whether he was properly appointed or not. And if he doesn't fight about that, the ruling by Judge Cannon is that he was not technically properly appointed, and therefore he doesn't have the authority to prosecute those two, those two aides to Trump down there at the Mar-a-Lago property.
Yeah, who moved the documents? Yeah. This is Miracle Seeker says, hey, Trump claimed he declassified the documents. So that isn't an issue, right? You can, you're saying,
he had
look,
a dream.
These are,
he had a dream like Joseph. He had a dream like Joseph in the Old Testament. And in that dream, he declassified them. And whatever goes through Trump's mind and whatever goes through one of his dreams is supposedly declassification. He never declassified them in any meaningful way. And so they're not declassified. Now, day one of his new presidency, could he declassify them? Sure. He'll play all those games, Mark.
Yeah. There are a lot of games being played. There is, I'm just looking at a couple of interesting questions. Here's one from No Contendo on the Teixeira sentencing, 15 years for the kid who disclosed, as you know, top secret information. He was just sentenced this week. And 200 on Julian Assange. Now, I don't know that they were talking about 200 years for Julian Assange. I don't know, but I certainly did put Julian Assange through it. There is sort of an asymmetry between some of these cases and the sentences that they draw. Isn't that the case, David?
Well, maybe once a federal prosecutor, always a federal prosecutor. But I tend to look at the idea that, you can't declassify things because you're unhappy about some issue. And I know that some people think it's great that, how do we know about all this huge surveillance of us? How do we know about this enormous surveillance state? Well, we know it from a whistleblower who ever since then, once he got to Russia, seems like he's never going to be able to come back. And, you know, he paid that price for what's obviously wrong. I mean, it's civil disobedience. But if you're going to engage in civil disobedience, I think you have to pay the price. And it's wrong to declassify these things. And so whether one person got 15 years, whether Assange got too much time, I don't look back favorably on Assange. I know some people see him as nothing but, you know, what a John Paul Zenger, you know,
like a conduit, right?
One of the great, you know, people in the history of the freedom of press and freedom of speech and stuff like that. But, you know, you want to talk about Trump? He helped Trump get elected, didn't he, in 2016? So did a lot of other people. And is that glorious? No, that's not glorious. He brought something awful onto America, and now Mr. Awful's back again.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to get into a whole thing on Assange, although it's an interesting conversation because I would say you can argue, and he would argue, or some would argue for him, that he was just a conduit, like if it was the New York Times and the Pentagon Papers or whatever it might be, they sort of fall into the same category. I mean, when you point to the actual specifics, which are associated with getting Trump elected, you know, it's hard to argue that that was a righteous cause. So I'm kind of with you on that anyway. But again, I don't want to get it. What I would like to just bridge to through Assange or whomever is the pardons that really may be issued in large numbers when Donald Trump gets into office. Now, he could absolutely, David, couldn't he just drench those January 6th guys, all of whom had some kind of jail time that they have served or that they are serving? He could drench them with presidential pardons, could he not?
Absolutely. I think there'll be a lot of controversy. I think what people, people are, rightly so depressed about this result. I've heard some of your guests say that they're still in the fetal position. And I get it. But the reality is, I remember what the world was like in 2018, 2019. Trump had the same trifecta. And now, since then, Trump has, 3 years of federal judges that he's picked. He's picked almost all the judges in the Northern District of Texas, people who are still on X, people who are still with Musk, and I'm getting off of that X. I just got on there by force of habit, and I'm going to get on one of the new sites. I just think that's really something urgent that people ought to do. But now you have to agree to litigation in the Northern District of Texas. If you're on X and you have any dispute with X, you have to bring your suit in the Northern District of Texas. Why is that? Because there are 10 out of 11 Republican judges there. That's the same one that gave us the mifepristone ruling that could apply to women not being able to take that medical abortion drug, which is the way that most women have that procedure. Most women. His ruling there in the Northern District of Texas would have knocked that out. And that is where Musk is making you bring any lawsuit that you have against X if you stay on X, Northern District of Texas. That's not even where he is. He's in a different district in Texas. So he wants to direct all the cases there. So starting with your question about the pardons and all of that, there will be an absolute uproar over all these things. You're not going anywhere. The other podcasts aren't going anywhere. The New York Times, CNN, nobody is going anywhere except reporting day by day, minute by minute, the atrocities, the outrages that Trump has in mind for the country. So the pardons, the first time that a pardon comes up, they're going to go through. They're going to have the person who got beaten. They're going to have the wife come on and say, my husband used to be normal. I used to have a normal relationship with him. Things were good. Now he's really got this brain damage. I'm doing everything I can to take care of him. He was beaten by this man. You can see it on tape here, who Trump's about to give a pardon to. And that will be every single pardon. That will be everything that happens. It's not like the country's going to say, oh, carte blanche, Mr. Trump. Just the opposite. And so, I mean, it's not like I'm forming the resistance. The resistance is all around us. And you can see it just keeps coming and coming. Already, all these groups, I think the Michigan Arab Americans have already said, please forgive us. Please, please forgive us. I don't know what we were thinking. We brought this man who is so awful for a two-state solution. We brought this man who's so awful for the causes. We believe him. We brought him to power. I don't know what we were thinking.
So in addition to this is interesting because you're essentially saying that the media and by extension the public will blow back on January 6th pardons so vociferously, so angrily, that somehow that will get Trump to reconsider? Is that really what we're counting on in regard to that?
Well, just to take that, some Congress member in a Republican district, they have these town meetings. Okay, the town meeting will be, I suppose, all of the law enforcement people there who may have previously supported that Republican candidate, saying, "How come you're not doing something about Trump? Why aren't you cutting off the funding? You know what this man is doing, you Republican Congress member of mine? He's giving pardons to people who beat a police officer just like me. He said he was going to help law enforcement. Look at these people who marauded the Capitol. Look at the awful things that they did. If he tries to pardon the people with the 18 or 20-year sentence, those are the ones who sicked these folks on police officers, who sicked them on the Congress people. They'll point out that all the Republicans were there cowering. They'll show that wherever Hawley wants to go in life, Senator Hawley, I think everything that Hawley ever does for the rest of his life there'll be that thing where he's giving that fist to the people that Trump is now talking about pardoning. And so that's all that's all I know about Hawley, except I don't agree with almost any of his votes. But the idea that the chickens are not gonna come home to us, you look at how they made stuff up. You look at how they magnified things against the Biden-Harris administration. What, they think they're gonna get kid gloves? I mean, people are gonna speak the truth to power, Mark, to all these people. I mean, did you go through the list of cabinet appointments, besides the two that you mentioned? Tulsi Gabbard, when they mention these names to senators, because some of them got to the senators before they got it from the feed. And there's all these great things with these dumbfounded Republican senators. Like, he picked that person. Oh my God. He picked that person, and over it went. If anyone wants to call in and tell us what Tulsi Gabbard has done in her career besides meet with that Assad over in Syria, that entitles her to be the head of 13 national security intelligence agencies, I'd love to hear. And I think the Republican senators would love to hear that. So
she's had a show on Fox News, which which is something that Donald Trump values. But you're really, in the case of Tulsi Gabbard, I was saying in the last hour, she's had no intelligence experience. I mean, she's going to run these intelligence agencies. These are people, again, who are on TV. And by the way, they're neocons and hawks. So all of you who think that these people are pacifists and they're anti-war, I know Trump ran on an anti-war platform because he was going to stop the funding of the Ukraine war. I mean, which is capitulation probably more than it is anti-war. I mean, the idea somehow that these people are anti-war is ludicrous. Look at them. This is a hawkish crew. Marco Rubio is your Secretary of State. All right, so I just think that there was the BS of winning the presidency, and now you're seeing the reality of who ends up populating that presidential administration. There they are. Thank you, Albert. That is really...
Well, Mark, some people say, well, we're older, we don't get it, young people, and young people are great. We were young people and we were idealistic and everything else. But when you've seen this so many times as you and I have seen it, okay, it is really depressing. I mean, Nixon ran on peace is at hand. Peace is at hand. He was the big peacenik candidate, supposedly. And after Nixon ran on peace is at hand, he kept the war going for years after peace was at hand, so he could run the next time and have Kissinger say, peace is at hand. And so all these phony isolationists, all these phony peaceniks like Trump, it's a big lie. But I'll tell you what I think is going to preserve Ukraine's right to defend itself and Ukraine fighting, even with Trump coming in there. So many of the armaments over there, the munitions, are made by American manufacturers. They're making huge money on this. And while generally I don't like the military-industrial complex, the military-industrial complex is getting fat and happy on all these armaments. And they're going to tell Trump, all this rhetoric is very nice. And we know that you want to have the Moscow Trump, okay? Although you're never going to have it, Trump. Get over it. They're not going to give you the Moscow Trump hotel, okay? So stop kissing the behind of Putin, because this is costing us a lot of money. We're making all these munitions that are going to Ukraine, and we want to keep doing it. keep the war going. Now, I happen to agree with this one particular war going because I think Putin is, another Hitler. If he's allowed to march across this part of Europe, he's going to march across even more of Europe. I think the Europeans see it that way, Mark. And so this is not my legal, this is my political opinion. I think the Germans and the others are going to up the amount that they spend with us buying American munitions. I don't think that Ukraine is going to have to sue for peace. And, Putin is he's running out of Russians. Now he has North Koreans. I'm not making this up. It's like Stalin, right? Stalin had to fight World War II with, with soldiers with Asian soldiers. And now Russia is fighting Europe with Asian soldiers from North Korea.
I'm just seeing something on Tulsi Gabbard here. Beach Bum Bob says, Tulsi Gabbard is a 7-year Democratic congressperson and officer in the U.S. Army. This is the person you want to disparage? I'm not disparaging her service. I'm not disparaging the sacrifice she made, and I'm not even disparaging her representation of Hawaii. But she is being put in charge of a massive bureaucracy and the intelligence community, and it would appear that she's met with Assad, she has represented Russian talking points publicly, and it is, I would say, at minimum, something that would put a question mark over that appointment. She is, I think, manifestly ill-equipped to handle the kind of administrative challenge that's associated with the intelligence community. And again, I go back to the fact that I'm not disparaging her Army and military experience. I'm disparaging the appointment based on the fact that she's had no real deep dive into the intelligence community. And you want to put her in charge of the nation's intelligence communities. I just don't think you can do that.
I think you're... No. Mark, can I say this to your correspondent? And thank you very much for sharing your views with us, and share them more in response to what Mark and I are saying. Kelly would be wonderful in that job. Keep Austin in the government and have Austin, our Secretary of Defense, take that job. Take so many Republicans and Democrats who could do that job. General Mattis, who has tremendous experience. The fact that she has 7 years experience kind of pales in comparison with the people that I just named who have decades of experience. Why not pick one of them? And I think you will want to look very, very closely into what happened with Syria. What were those meetings all about? I don't think anyone has supported that person in Syria except maybe her. Why did she do it? Take a look at any financial entanglements and all that. Do a deep dive, I think, before you defend her. I think the Senate will do an incredibly deep dive into her, and I don't think she's going to make it.
I mean, these confirmation hearings, if they have them, will be revelations to people like Beach Bum Bob, even, I mean, who defend her. I mean, she is, look, she ran for president as a Democrat, and I always thought that she was fairly skilled in handling media, and I think that there's a premium on that amidst these appointments that Donald Trump has made. Beyond that, I just don't see it. And as an apologist for Assad and Putin, I don't get where she jibes with American interests. And again, I don't mean to sound like I'm actually recoiling from, I feel, sort of some of her hawkish tendencies. And you can be hawkish in the way that you capitulate to places like Russia and regimes like in Russia and Syria. I mean, these are against American interests. I'm not suggesting that you raise up arms against them, but I am suggesting that you don't represent them in talking points either on Fox News Channel or anywhere else. So that's where I am on that. Anything else for David Katz before I excuse the witness? I've had him here for way too long. I mean, beyond his normal commitment to us.
Yeah,
Kim?
can we talk about the sentencing in Trump's New York case? Because it's been delayed again, and I don't know what they're going to do with this at this point.
I think David said that they're going to just keep delaying it. It's not going to happen. Is that what you said, David, or did I read that somewhere else?
I think you might have read that somewhere else, but I have a pretty good take on it because I'm on these New York stations a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been following it, pretty closely. So the judge was going to rule on Tuesday, and in fact, they were very excited. The Times of London was about what they thought he was going to rule the next day. So I was on late Monday night. Then on Tuesday, he decided not to actually rule on whether the conviction is good or not. There were two things that were going to happen. He was going to take a look at this issue of presidential immunity, and we just talked about, does it apply to state court? And again, I think logically, while I don't agree with the U.S. Supreme Court's 6-3 decision, it has to logically apply to state court. It doesn't make any sense to say that a former president can be criminally prosecuted in all 50 states and all the cities around the United States. The only thing presidential immunity keeps him immune from is a federal prosecution. By the same token, that they thought it would greatly impair our separation of powers if they didn't make the executive that strong, even a former executive, it has to follow in state court. So I think that the judge was going to say that, but then the question is, was this covered by presidential immunity? Because it seemed to be non-official action, which was going to be one of his big issues. This was non-official action. This was paying a porn star to keep her mouth shut before the election. So he wasn't even the president then. So you say, how could it possibly have been a presidential action? What happened while he was president? What happened while he was president was that he had falsified these records, and they were going to show that this was a monthly payment to Michael Cohen. So he met Michael Cohen in the Oval Office in the White House while he was president, and he either paid him by hand or he sent him from the Oval Office a check every month, which were purported legal fees. That was a lie. The jury unanimously found 12-0. The truth was, and Trump knew it, that this was hush money being disguised, being falsified as attorney fees for work that the attorney had never done. It was all a big phony baloney, and that phony baloney went on while he was in the White House. Moreover, he met with Hope Hicks while he was in the White House, and he commented on that. Those two issues came before the jury. And what the U.S. Supreme Court said, and this was wild that Chief Justice Roberts joined this part of the opinion 6-3, was that you can't even mention in a courtroom anything that the president did during the time that the president was president for an ex-president. So therefore, something did come in before the jury that should not have come in. That often happens. The analysis is then called harmless error. In other words, was that a harmless error, or was that an error allowing that little bit that came in before the jury that allegedly was official action while he was president? Was that enough to taint or destroy the entire verdict? And the answer would be no. I think the judge was going to say that even without that, this overwhelming evidence would have been enough to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. The judge would have said, in my opinion, having watched the trial in this jury, the jury would have convicted if they never heard that he wrote some of the checks in the Oval Office, and if they'd never heard about what he said back and forth with Hope Hicks in the Oval Office. Therefore, the conviction stands. That's what I think he was going to rule. Then he was going to, 2 weeks later, move on to the sentencing. It being a valid conviction, what sentence would he give? I think he was going to disappoint all the people who wanted Trump to go to jail or to be on home detention or to have to report to a New York City probation officer while he was the president. He was going to say none of that. And my prediction on Times of London was that he would give him a large fine, say the conviction was good, and then Trump could appeal to fare thee well, including eventually to the U.S. Supreme Court. That I no longer think is going to happen. I think he's going to let the can get kicked down the road until Trump is actually in office. And then he's going to say, come back in 4 years when he's not president anymore, and we'll talk about it some more. And it's going to go bye-bye.
Well, again, see point A then, which is that it's essentially going to get delayed to and evaporate.
Mark, can I ask you one last thing? Do you have a thought on Merrick Garland at this point?
I'm disgusted by Merrick Garland. I am appalled by Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland has let down this country. He may not be patient zero. Patient zero is probably, I would say, patient zero would be Mitch McConnell, because he had the chance to convict Trump in the Senate of the J6 conspiracy and coup, but a coup attempt. But once you get past him and Biden, who chose him, you get to him. And he delayed 2 years, and that 2 years really might have been the difference between us dealing with Trump today and not. Your
it's
thoughts?
Like a huge event. It's a huge event in American history, and there's got to be a bestseller about it. What actually was the thinking? Someone's going to write it. I doubt it'll be Merrick Garland, but someone's going to write it, I think, fairly promptly, based on alleged inside information of what the calculus was. And I think it has to be that he thought it would really turn us into a banana republic, And Trump's doing that,
Yeah.
despite what Merrick
Well,
Garland's delay of 2 years. I think if he was worried about us turning into a banana republic, I can't understand that decision. Or if he really thought the evidence wasn't there until Casey Hutchinson and some of the others showed up in the January 6th committee. I mean, Adam Schiff was the hero. I have to say it now, my friend, the senator elect, but he was the great hero in moving that ball forward. But why Merrick Garland couldn't see that case the way the January 6th committee saw that case? I don't think there was that much new evidence that was really brought out. Yes, there was Casey Hutchinson, a few other details, but I don't know why, if Merrick Garland thought the evidence wasn't there until after he saw all of January 6th, I think the evidence was there. If he was worried about turning us into a banana republic, all he was going to do was appoint a special prosecutor. Then the special prosecutors were going to decide whether the evidence and the facts were there or not. But to take 2 years to appoint, mind-boggling.
I've heard every excuse that, in big investigations like this, they go from bottom up. But the reality is
they weren't going to know about the big people.
That's
the
BS.
guy who allotted the capital.
RM says, I wouldn't even name my dog Merrick or Garland. I have that much respect for my dog. Yeah, I'm disgusted by Merrick Garland. And, if he does write a book, which he won't, but I hope it's not some apologist book that is written for Merrick Garland, the way that James Comey wrote this book about, well, it was about leading the FBI and his interaction with Trump, but it got to the money, which was, and all people cared about, why did you release this information that you were reopening the Hillary Clinton investigation 10 days before the election? And then he papered over it with a BS explanation. I put them all in the same horrible category as real blights on American history. So
I think Merrick thought people say I'm Pollyanna. I think Merrick thought he was doing the right thing. And when we know every single fact that happened, I don't think it was for any corrupt purpose at all. I think that it's not the judgment you and I would have.
I completely agree. I don't think he did it out of any sort of with nefarious goals in mind. In fact, Yusuf Gina says, Merrick Garland was a typical Dem. Play nicely and hope the other side returns the favor. Wow, that is a great comment. That's exactly what Democrats do. They play a cage match with the Republicans, but somehow they don't want to really actually throw any haymakers. It's just unbelievable to me, and we are paying the price.
Stay tuned. I think there's a lot of haymakers by Democrats in the future. Stay tuned.
I hope so. Somebody mentioned and I will let you go here, I promise, but somebody said Biden, I thought I put the comment aside. Essentially, they said Dark Brandon was too happy with Trump. I think he knows that there is another shoe to drop. Maybe. I think, honestly, Joe Biden was just doing what he does well, which is try to maintain the institutions of government and a peaceful transition so you look civil with Donald Trump. I wouldn't read too much into his disposition,
Another act by an institutionalist. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. You can find David Katz across the English-speaking world, Fox News Channel, London Radio. I love it. I was going to play some of your London radio stuff today, but we got too far behind. So next time. I love the way they speak with you on those morning shows. David Katz joins us from the United States of America.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, yes. David, this is a sticky wicket that Trump has set up. It's all so great.
My father was an immigrant from Nazi Germany by way of England. So he's passed, but he would be happy to.
Yeah, that you're there on the
UK radio. He'd be very happy.
Team UK. All right, David Katz, everybody.
Great to be with you, Mark, Jim.
Yeah, love seeing you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is outrageous, Albert. How do we get so late? I don't know what the hell is going on. I'd love to talk more about Tulsi Gabbard. I don't see how you appoint her to run, the intelligence community. Here it is. I like to have, Beach Bum Bob, but now he's moved on to a different topic. I like to figure out who's saying what and then try to get to them. So thank you for your comments. We take them in real time. Elise with a $5 super chat. She loves the whimsical coffee drinking music, which I do. I love it too. I love the. There'll be new coffee mugs coming out too. This is just a diner mug that I put our stickers on. You can get the stickers on our merch site. The merch site is getting redone right now, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, Elise, thank you. Always appreciate your support. We're crowdfunded, so I appreciate you throwing us a few bucks too.
Will it still be the same URL for the merch site?
Yeah, that's all the same, right? Karen says, thank you, getmarkmerch.com, that's it. I've never heard anyone admit that they don't wash their hands. Ooh, says Karen Cooper. Yeah. Sandy says, who doesn't wash their hands? This is, again, in response to Pete Hegseth, the new DOD appointee. We'll see if he passes, whether this becomes a recess appointment or he actually gets confirmed. I think it's absurd based on his complete lack of experience that you would put him in charge of this massive bureaucracy like DOD. But anyway, the big thing is that there's all this video coming out of saying, he doesn't wash his hands. Now, Just Give Me the Truth points out.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just Give Me the Truth says, okay, just found this. The argument against washing one's hands is often based on the misconception that doing so excessively can disrupt the natural balance of bacteria on your skin. Yeah, which is BS, but
Gross.
It is out there. Coming spring 2025, says Louise, the Donald Trump Bible Constitution Limited Edition, now including newly declassified national secret documents. Buy now before Russia does. Yeah, get yours now.
I wonder if there's any way to withhold the stuff. And I wonder if there's any way to withhold anything from Trump, because we know he can't be trusted with secrets. First of all, who is he selling them to, allegedly? Second of all, he can't keep them in his mouth. You heard it during the election. Like, he can't not speak.
No,
right?
it's true.
He
It's
can't
true.
be trusted. So, like, is there any way
Don't talk to me that way.
Yeah,
the really important stuff to, like, keep that under wraps unless he really needs to have it to make a decision? Can we just kind of keep that down?
Well, actually, it's interesting that you say this because it was very much talked about during the first Trump administration that they felt that he couldn't be trusted with many of these secrets. And the very question that you're asking was asked, is there a way to somehow keep it from him? And the answer is no. He's the president of the United States. Can't keep stuff from him. On the monkeys who are wild, the lab monkeys that have gotten out in D.C., the monkeys are are in D.C. for Trump appointments that they're going to get. I see. All right.
Yeah.
That's cool. 2028 is the year of the monkeys, says Rich. Thank you, Robert Martin, for the Trump appointment comment. Gordon says, I'm so proud of my father who protested the Vietnam War, lost his job with the city as a direct result. We were talking about kids wearing MAGA hats and all the rest. And when it comes to schooling, Robert Lewis asks, do you think homeschoolers are educated at all? They know nothing. They don't know how to read. They don't know history. They don't know English. Well, that may be. I don't know. I know that if you want to homeschool your child, you need to still have your child pass basic thresholds when it comes to learning. Isn't that right, Kim? You can't just...
I'm not a big homeschooling advocate, but I think there are tests, state tests that your child still has to pass in order to move on to the next grade and then to graduate. I don't necessarily think you don't learn anything. I think you learn what your parents want you to learn. That's the problem.
Oh, most certainly the case. And that's true of so many schools, parochial schools and religious schools.
Yeah.
People's Republic, I was talking about how government is important. I know that there can be government overreach, but I feel that a lot of the regulations that Trump and his cronies are going to completely dismantle, they are protections, environmental protections, consumer protections, et cetera. You hear me talking about this from time to time. But People's Republic of Santa Monica says $1.5 million public toilet is also government regulations. Yeah, I mean, I can go toe-to-toe with you on stuff that government has effed up with, okay? And in fact, if you really want to talk about government waste, Pete Hegseth, the Fox News weekend morning show host, is going to potentially be in charge of probably one of the most wasteful agencies in the history of the world, and that is the Pentagon, the Department of Defense. You know this. I know this. I don't think Hegseth has any sense of it, because Hegseth is someone who has no experience jumping into this. He is a guy who has served in the military. Good. That's great. Put him in charge of a platoon. You don't put him in charge of the Department of Defense. It's crazy. I mean, it's a challenging, to understate it in the extreme, it is a challenging managerial position. You have to really know how to administer. Anyway, you think Musk will go after the military first when looking for government efficiency issues? Yeah, thank you, says Randy. I mean, he probably should, but I think that's all crazy. Look, Musk is there for his own reasons. He's not there to help America per se. On the legal issues and on Matt Gaetz, it's a witch hunt. Dave says, it's a witch hunt. I say that at Starbucks when they screw up my latte. Exactly. I mean, it's the most common refrain now. Next, the trash man will be made a 4-star general. Yeah. I wonder how many of the J6 protesters, after they're pardoned, will get the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I mean, you just see a degrading of everything when Trump takes power. Wes Theory with the super sticker. Thank you, Wes. We give a shout out to our super sticker supporters.
Big shout out.
By the way, there's a new Patreon supporter I wanted to give a shout out to as well. Louis says, 2-term president. Mark, are you assuming that he just doesn't use a Sharpie on the Constitution and award himself a lifetime appointment?
Right.
It may be. I mean, it seems tried and true, his Sharpie move, right? Peter Jones is our latest Patreon
Big
supporter.
shout out.
Thank you, Peter, for jumping on board in our community of Patreon supporters. That's how we stay on the air. You can visit themarkthompsonshow.com, click Patreon or PayPal, and you can be part of that community. And we appreciate all your support. Again, there are links also to Patreon and PayPal under all our videos on YouTube. But if you're listening and you want more, themarkthompsonshow.com, click Patreon or PayPal, and you'll be able to contribute there. By the way, you have to put themarkthompsonshow.com. If you just put markthompsonshow.com, you end up at a Christian ventriloquist site, which is, yes, I agree. I love Christian ventriloquism as much as anyone, but it doesn't help us. So it's themarkthompsonshow.com. I wanted to mention something, and I may put it off to tomorrow, but Calvin Wong, I'll mention Your Loss tomorrow. Beautiful tribute to Calvin Wong's mother on YouTube, and I'll share it tomorrow. I'll share some of it tomorrow, and definitely grieve for a great supporter of the show. We always call him a shadow producer because he does such great stuff. I was really moved as I watched it, so I want to
video. Yeah,
I want to share it. Yeah. All right. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
I blame Albert for us not getting Law and Disorder in. I had a whole Law and Disorder that's really good, man. And my Law and Disorder includes a raid in Italy on a bunch of forgers. I've got high-end stuff. I've got That's Rich still on. I mean, I don't know. We're trying to get all this stuff in this hot political season when government is taking center stage with a lot of these controversial governmental appointments. Anyway, I will. I'll get to it, I hope, tomorrow in the first half hour. It's Friday, so we'll have Michael Shorian. We'll talk about this week in politics. We'll have some Florida news and Snyder on movies. Why don't people get how qualifications work, says Luis. I've been to over 1,000 shows, but it doesn't make me qualified to manage you too. So frustrating. Well said, Luis. Well said.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, Shadow.
Bye-bye.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Hey, everybody.
All the time. Bye-bye.
I love my Shadow. I love my Albert. I love my Kim and all of you. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.